Good morning. Please, can we fill the forward seats? Please. Yes, he's talking Kaduna. He didn't put it with Abuja at all. No, hey, your class. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. I know we finished late yesterday. Some people are still having some hangover from the young Carniwood night we had yesterday. That's fine. But we still have a day of activity, so we'll just go ahead and begin. Our first panel for the day is writing, art, fashion, and popular culture. I'll go ahead and introduce the moderator for this panel. Please round of applause for Mariam Bakari. Mariam Bakari is a fashion icon, a journalist, producer, and editor with Voice of Nigeria. She runs a lifestyle magazine blog. She's also a stylist that believes in upcycling clothes for climate change and is an avid reader, pet lover, and tea enthusiast. In her free time, she cooks, binges on Netflix, and does numerous research for fun. Thank you so much, Mariam, for joining us. The next panelist I'll be introducing is Star Zara. A round of applause for her, please. Star Zara is a Nigerian writer, poet, and textile artist. She's an assistant curator for the Kaduna Fashion and Arts Exhibition and an alumni of the Nikkei Research Center for Arts and Culture, Abuja. Star is a recipient of the 2024 Africa Leadership University, Rwanda and British Council Program on Creative Industries. She also holds certifications in media and arts for peace, communication, and development and cultural arts strategy. She's the author of The Dance of Dawn, and her latest book, The Girls and the Silhouette of Form, is out by Masobe. Congratulations, Star. The next panelist is, round of applause please for Aisha Aliyu Bima. Aisha is an art curator, writer, researcher, and photographer. She's the director of arts at the African School of Economics in Abuja. Her work focuses on Africa's contemporary arts through the lens of language, geography, conflict, material, and history. Her research subjects include the Hausa language, its influence and counter-influences across the Sahel and the interconnections in this region, the past and present cultures of Nok Valley, and material and ecological functions in African art. She is a published writer in The Republic, Riada, and ZA magazine. Her recent exhibition, Arewa, with a question mark, presented in one store of northern Nigeria through the works of its 3 generations of contemporary artists, and it opened at the Yemisi Shillong Museum of Art in Lagos in July. Welcome, Aisha. Can you go ahead and test your mic? So turn it on and then...
Hi. Is this okay?
The button to turn it
Can
on.
you hear me? Yeah, I think I'm good. Am I?
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hibav, day 2. I'm actually glad to be here with this group of people. Unfortunately, we're supposed to be 5 on stage, but 2 of us can't make it. Mustafa Bulama is stuck in Kaduna, and Abdul Karim Baba Aminu unfortunately lost his mom a couple of days back. May Allah grant her peace and Jannatul Firdausi. So, like I've been introduced, I am Mariam Bakari, and today we're talking about writing, art, fashion, and pop culture. So before we start, I want you on my left and right to tell me in two sentences, things people don't know about you, like at all. It can't be found on Google or in any of your books or your artwork. Like, what do we not know about you? 2 sentences only. Aisha, I'll start with you.
This is actually tough because I think I have everything about myself on the internet. I'm so sorry, I'm an open book. But then my favorite color is orange. I don't think I have that anywhere. So yeah, maybe that's it.
Can you see the shock on my face? Like, I didn't know your favorite color is orange. I would think black. What about you, Star?
All right, I don't think there's anything that, I don't know, nothing comes to mind. Maybe because, okay, I like cartoons. I really love cartoons, if that's fair.
I can see why you're on this panel. I mean, we had 2 cartoonists here, but I get it, I get it now. All right, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to have an interaction with the audience as well, because this is not just a panel where you hear us talk, we want you to also give back as well. So as we're rounding up, we're going to have question and answer from maybe 2 or 3 people, and later on you could actually find them outside and talk about some more. So talking about writing, especially here in pop culture, Hausa. Zari, you're a writer as well, yeah? Prevail in the community, especially the Hausa community. Because let's face it, Hausas have been writing since, when I remember novels, I think of Hausa novels, yeah? So how does writing prevail in a community like Hausa?
Okay, so I think the first thing I should say is that I'm a Northern and grew up in Warri, Delta State. So I grew up, the very early years of my life, I had zero connections, or maybe full connection to my roots as a Northern or within the Hausa community, or, so writing, when you ask me that question, is a sensitive question. It's a question that I cannot answer from within, but I have to stand out and perhaps show you how it was from my perspective as a Northern who was not exposed early on to writings or Hausa writing or even the language in itself. So I can remember clearly that my mom grew up in Kaduna. She was born in Kaduna, lived all her life in Kaduna, speaks the language like it's what she's most comfortable in. And I remember that it was from her that I even had the slightest idea, of Hausa, of being exposed to it. And so here's a funny question. Here's a funny story. When I was around 7, 8, I had this English textbook from school. And there was this story. I think I was younger because the story was a really, children's story. And I just remember in the book there was a line that said, "Baba loves eating hot masa." And I just went to my mom and was like, "What is masa?" So you can see that there was really not. But I would like to say that book, coming back to writing, right? You can see how even for a child it was important that with the stories that are told was able to make me say, oh, I know that I'm in Northern, I know I should know what masa is, but I don't. So, and I went to my mom and said, okay, what is this? And also, again, I remember reading Zainab Akali, and that was those were the most available, those were the only way I could assess the culture at that time. So it's important when you talk about writing and you talk about Hausa culture, or the culture of the North, as it were, it's important that we tell the stories. And what writing does is that it goes beyond borders, it goes across the board, and you don't know where that story you've written will go. And that's why it's important, because you cannot always have an ibaf. You will not have an ibaf in every home, but you will have the stories that are living here find their way there. So that's it.
Thank you very much. And over to you, Aisha. First of all, tell me what you understand by pop culture.
I mean, it's the dominant culture that's easily accessible to all of us. It's what we see everywhere. It's what a majority of the people know. It's popular. I think the term speaks for itself, right?
Yes, it does. And I know a couple of ways where we can actually reach out to the masses is through writing, fashion, and art, which I know you're very versed in. Tell me about art in the new age. How has it been? How has the journey been for you, basically, in using your art platform to interact with people outside?
I think for me, art is a very important lens of inquiry, right? It's a tool to investigate the society that we live in. It's also for me a very important tool to even investigate and sort of negotiate my understanding of Nigeria. Because when we zoom out of Hausa popular culture and we talk about Nigerian popular culture, very often I find that, again, there's little to no direct northern presence, especially in the Nigerian mainstream art space. So for me, a lot of my inquiry using art is to try and find a way to understand what it means to be Nigerian, and then the position of a northern Nigerian or a Hausa speaker in that negotiation. Professor Jerry Buhari, who's a professor of fine art in ABU Zaria, has this theory of the triangular exchange of ideas that has always happened in Nigeria, even before colonial boundaries were drawn. Because there's always this idea that Nigeria was just an amalgamation, right, of people that don't have anything in common, do not have any interaction with one another and all of that. But I have found that that's very false. In the olden days and now in the contemporary times, there is always overtly or covertly this exchange of ideas, exchange of aesthetics, exchange of vision that goes on in a triangular way across the width and breadth of this country. So for me, the art that is being produced, that has been produced in the past and that is being produced now, is a way to sort of understand that movement, and then to also understand how the identity of a Nigerian, by large, is exported out of Nigeria. What goes first? Is it the Hausa identity? Is it the Nigerian identity? What really is it? And in my work, I found that there's a lot of exciting things happening. I find that sometimes the fact that a lot of Hausa culture, a lot of northern Nigerian culture is not represented in the mainstream, it allows for more exploration, and the artists are able to sort of go deeper into the practice because it's not dealing with a lot of influence and the push and pulls that go on in the mainstream. Alternatively as well, because there has always been this exchange that exists in the Hausa-speaking countries, in the Sahelian countries, in the Hausa-speaking communities, I find that exchange still goes on, and you have some excellent practitioners of art that has a lot of influence of the Hausa language, of the Hausa aesthetics in Nigeria and especially in northern Ghana. Right? In Kumasi, some of the most brilliant artists that I see working out of there, Halima Idrisu, Al-Hassan Isa, and the likes of them, are all of Hausa origin, and you find a heavy representation of those aesthetics in their work.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, yes, a round of applause, please. Another question that has to do with that. So it's funny you speak about amalgamation. Driving down today towards this, I was like, 1914 was when we were amalgamated, but I knew that the Hausas had always been present in community and society, not just in Nigeria, but in about 7 or more different countries where Hausas are the majority. Now, I want to ask, is it that we do not have record keeping in Hausa communities, or what is it that makes people think the Hausas probably started once we got amalgamated? Do we have record keeping? Do we have histories? Do we have the likes of that, basically?
I think there's excellent record keeping of the movements, the migration, because Hausa has a very long history of literacy, right? So things have been written and documented for very, very long. Is there an inquiry, again, from the mainstream or from some of the most dominant actors? That's where the problem lies, right? That we have a lot of these archives, a lot of these histories, a lot of these manuscripts in places that are not so readily accessible to the majority and the mainstream. And sometimes all you need is one person to do the work and sort of shift the perspective of the way that we look at these things. Of course, after amalgamation, or let's say with colonialism, Hausa became like a more widespread or more widely spoken language in Nigeria, like across Nigeria's ethnicities, for example. When the Sudan missions translated the Bible into Hausa language, a lot of minorities began to speak Hausa even more frequently than they did. So when you look at things like that, you see like how the language has evolved and the way the records exist. But Hausa has always been there. It has always, and Hausa people have traveled far and wide. I think the last Hibaf was something they explored. Yes, so the records are there. It's just for more people to develop that curiosity about it and for more people to be outspoken about it, because that's something that I've found. When Nigerian history is proposed, when African history is proposed, and you do not have enough people speaking and saying, wait, there's this other history, there's this other way that this culture travels and it interacts, this popular culture. It, like with music, right? Ado Gwanja's were, I think, sometime last year, was trending heavily like across the Middle East. But in Nigeria, the only conversation you had about popular music trending in another country was Rema's music being popular in India. So when you do not have people drawing the attention of the mainstream, or even again highlighting that this alternative pathway of like socio-cultural interaction is going on, then you don't have anybody. People will just say it's not there. But it is there, and somebody has to draw their attention to it.
Thank you very much for that. We know art transcends writing, music, and fashion. Please start. Tell me a bit about your textile business, should I say?
Well, before I go to my question, is it okay? I had a little to what Aisha said. So when Aisha curated Ariwa with a question mark in Lagos, I thought it was truly phenomenal because, yeah, she deserves that. And here's why. Because like I said, I grew up in the South. I grew up in the heart of the South. I grew up in Warri. And I remember, like, there wasn't really a lot of, like, if you know Warri well, or you know Delta State, it's a really southern place, right? And I never quite saw a lot of, well, I guess this is it. When talking about popular culture, there's the culture that is popular. There's the Hausa popular culture that is popular within the Hausa community. And then there is what seems like the popular culture outside of that community. So now, when Aisha took Ariwa with the question mark to Lagos, what she was doing was taking popular culture from here and highlighting it, basically platforming it, opening it up to other people who might not necessarily understand it, but now here's an opportunity to do so. So I think that well, in the South, especially within the country, there's not a lot of is that the word for it? Well, outside the country, there are a lot of things going on about the Hausa culture, the Hausa language. But within the country itself, how widespread are the stories that we really want to tell? Not the ones that are being told, but the ones that we want to be popular. So I know that growing up there, it was most of what you saw, most of what you could connect with was the fashion. Definitely not the language. But when you see someone dressed like you know, oh, that's a northern. You don't care where they come from in the north. You just, and every northern person is an Hausa person there. So I feel like when we talk about art and in light of popular culture, there's always that difference between what is popular within the community and what is popular outside. And I also think that this is where writing comes in as journalism, right? It's important that we tell the stories that are necessary, the stories that are important, and that we highlight outside of this community the stories that really define us, not the ones that we've allowed people to emphasize. So I think I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, I was going to get to that Ariwapa, which I will come back to eventually. But yeah, like I said, I want to know more about textile and how it infuses culture, you know.
So So yes, my maternal grandfather worked at the Kaduna textile factory before I was born. and I'm very, very proud of that. I have a lot of connections to the heart. My maternal grandfather worked at the Kaduna textile when it was in its booming days, and my paternal grandfather was like it was like a cultural director, so it took a lot of dancers from Benue State to other states when there are very important festivals. So I have that connection. So I think it's inevitable that I'm an artist now. And even though they're not here, I hope that they are proud of me being able to be on a stage like this and remember the work that they did. So I feel like my work with textile is largely inspired from just hearing stories of my grandfather. And then when we came to the north and the culture shock, because it was just a massive shock for me, the weather, the languages. I remember, I hope this is important. When we first moved here, that very night we arrived Abuja from Warri. I was just walking past a woman and I said, Mingo. And she called me back, come here. Why are you disrespectful? You don't know how to greet. and I just remember, because I was so young, and I just remember being so shocked because I was really shocked. So I think that just being immersed, having the opportunity to it's really an honor for me to be able to see the North with the eyes of sort of as an insider and a stranger at the same time. So I'm able to deeply appreciate it. And the little things that people might, take because it's familiar, it's not really familiar for me. So every day I'm getting to appreciate the culture. So textile was, it was really about me just, when I came, I was fascinated with the designs. These are new designs that I'm not familiar with. And so that's really what got me. But the main story is when I started my study at the Nika Research Center for Arts and Culture, that was in 2020. I learned batik, I learned tie-dye. But something struck me, and that was when I Googled about Kofarmata. Every story, every article was about how the craft is dying. And, and it just broke my heart, because this is a place that is so significant to our history as a people, as Northern people. And if you see, if you go to the South, the way that they've transformed batik, the way that they've highlighted it, the way that they've blown the trumpet so high. And I'm like, why is our story emphasizing the death of this? And that was when I was graduating, I told my tutor, Lower Africa, because I also learned under Aino Davis Okundai. So I told her, I said, I'm not specializing in batik. I'm specializing in tie-dye because I want to emphasize our history, and I want to make sure that the stories that are going to be told from now on, with me, with every other young person who will continue the craft seriously, is that it's not dying. This is our heritage, and this is what is ours.
Thank you, Star. So we can see the importance of writing. Now, if someone hadn't written the fact that this is dying, it wouldn't come to your head to actually want to do something to keep that or revive that nature, basically. So I can say literature or journalism or research writing actually does help in promoting or improving a lifestyle or so. So, Aisha. Yes.
I think I'm going to add to that but those articles that were being written, I'm not sure, while they have a point, I'm not sure that they're entirely true. And also there was a lot of misrepresentation. And this is why writing is so important, and accurate research, not just top of the water research, actually going down to hear firsthand. And one of the things that I was really unhappy with in terms of misrepresentation was the women of Kofa Mata. Like, the women are the designers of Kofa Mata, but I never saw them in those articles. I never saw them mentioned or even interviewed. So I thought that was a very important oversight, as it were, because just because I'm emphasizing as a writer that in journalism we have to take it seriously, not just, it's not, journalism is not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Confirming a story is not easy. There's so many factors that a story is like, there's this experiment where they whisper to one person's ear and you keep whispering. And when you get to the last person, it's a totally different thing. So I think that we need to, as writers, as journalists, we need to be intentional about verifying what the truth or whatever story we're pursuing.
I mean, luckily we are now at the digital age, which is actually easy to just fact check some of these things. But I know a lot of times our head doesn't go there. We see clickbait and we just read the headlines and we're done. So it takes a lot for you to actually question some articles. You have to be in that particular moment to understand these things.
Especially with something like the Kofa Mata dye pit. These are really, this is a very old place. And the people that are still there are not mostly, let's say the young northern people are not going into dyeing as we would want them to. So a lot of people that are still at Kofa Mata are aged. They're not really the digital age people. So a lot of information and you will not find on the internet. You would have to, go down there, talk, and discover it. So maybe if we have more young people willing to practice the craft, then we'll be able to, see some progress in terms of the internet or all of that.
Aisha, back to you. So I want to hear about Ariwa, ? Straight from the source. Why Lagos, first of all? Why did you choose Lagos for that? And what was the thought process behind that exhibition?
I think the first answer to why Lagos is because Lagos is very simply the artistic capital of Nigeria. And when I felt that a lot of the things I said in Ariwa or that the exhibition was questioning were not questions that were are very new to people in the north. We all know that we're not only Hausa people in the north. We all know we're not only Fulani people in the north. We know that there are a myriad of ethnicities. We understand why a majority of us speak Hausa. But in our representation in the Nigerian mainstream, it is not like that, especially in the artistic scene. It's prior to the exhibition, Ariwa, I think anybody, any art writer, anybody working in contemporary art could very easily come to Nigeria and write a history of Nigeria via its contemporary art without northern Nigeria. And he would write what is seemingly a complete history of Nigeria, mainly because we have a scarcity of cultural workers doing the behind-the-scenes work that enables a lot of popular culture to form. In music, you have A&Rs, right? The musician records the song. The A&Rs do all the behind-the-scenes work that allows that song to become popular or viral or for the right record labels to pick it up. In the same thing with films. A film is released. You have a lot of the film critics, a lot of the film journalists, all of those events happening that enable the film to make it to the mainstream or mainstream consciousness. And it's sort of the same thing with art. When you do not have curators looking at the work beyond a certain stereotype, beyond, looking at it beyond stereotypes and providing the work with the accurate context, then a lot of the work is just going to be lost in translation and it's not going to be spotlighted as it should. In the foundational movement of contemporary Nigerian arts, arts, we have the Zaria Art School or the Zaria Rebels, right? This is a movement that negotiated Nigerian art and started in the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. But beyond that, you don't hear anything about Zaria again in contemporary art. Maybe once in a while they have an exhibition, they remember, oh, we have to represent all of Nigeria in it. Let me quickly go to Zaria and find that one guy, and then they put his work. Oh, this is the northern work. What is the context? What is he saying? When you find that some of the most innovative, some of the most conceptual, some of the most futuristic ideas of African art are happening in the present Ahmadu Bello University School of Art. And I think that was why it was very, very important for me to bring these three generations of like former artistic practitioners and to see what they were saying, how artistic practice in northern Nigeria had evolved and how like we negotiated our identity as northern Nigerians, as Arewa, with a question mark. Like, what really does that Arewa mean? Does it encapsulate every single identity? Is it a representative of the Hausa Fulani political identity? What does it mean? And what is the depth of it? And what is its position in Nigerian art, in African art? And I think that exhibition really showed that, oh wow, it holds a very significant position. You have some of the most powerful artists, some of the most influential ideas in Nigerian art happening from this region of art that is so often neglected. So it was very important for me to take it to one of the most respected spaces as well in Nigerian art, because it wasn't if I had done it in Kano, for example, everybody in Kano knows, they might have come to see it and just focus on the aesthetics of the work, not the questions that the work was asking. And for me, I wanted that to be the point of view that people looked at Nigeria from that point of view. And also, I was tired of constantly in contemporary Nigerian and African art spaces, whenever I ask, why are there you're doing an exhibition on Nigerian rivers and there's no northern artists, why? And they're like, well, we don't see them. We don't hear of them. So I had to take it, like now it's in Lagos, you have no excuse. It's in your most respected space, right? And I also thought it was important to have it in a museum that existed in a university, because I wanted as many young people as well to see it and to confront the notion again, or the idea of Nigerianness, of Africanness that they're constantly fed, that neglects this entire geographical area and consciousness as well.
Thank you. Round of applause. So yesterday, while listening to I didn't know who speak, he mentioned how the youth are the drivers right now of pop culture, and we are at a digital age where the youth are representing more than the older people, So I want to ask now, what is the intersection between art and writing in a digital space at the moment?
Okay. I'm just going to, of course, again, touch on
it goes both ways.
Aisha said. So it's really, really funny, just as she said, that you hear, oh, we don't see the northern artists. And I find it so, because we just hosted the Kaduna Art and Fashion Festival for 2024. And this is basically like one of the biggest festivals where you're going to see northern Nigerian art, contemporary art, as it were. And these are amazing, mind-blowing works. And so that, it got me thinking. And here's what I think, or Aisha as a curator can also perhaps confirm or deny this, that the North does not have agents. We don't have art agents. We don't have people who push the market of our art. And I think this is a big problem, because sometimes artists are not the best people to talk about themselves. They're not going to talk about their art. They're not going to praise their art or tell you, oh. And I feel perhaps I also am convinced in a way that this is not the work of an artist, right? An artist should look at the society, document what he sees. An artist is a sentimental person. It's not a business. Business takes a certain aggression, that an artist does not possess. So I feel like we really, really have a huge space in the North for agents, for people who are going to push the business of our art, who are going to put it in people's faces, as it were. So I think I just had to.
Yeah, I think I'm going to confirm that. I do think that we need as many cultural agents, as many cultural workers as possible. I do think that the space is nowhere, because this is something I get from a lot of younger people who think that because me and Selma and Ghania, for example, are curators, that the space is filled up. The space is nowhere near filled up. There is so much work to be done. There is so much space for the work to be done. We need a lot more art writers. We need a lot more cultural writers. We need a lot more art critics writing, speaking, doing the behind-the-scenes work of our culture, if we want it to receive the respect and the understanding that it deserves. Very recently, in Nigerian music, we've seen a lot of the Hausa piano, all of the new ways of interpreting Hausa culture, Hausa rhythm, or sometimes even Arabic rhythms into Nigerian music. And then in the mainstream, they just lump it up as Hausa music. No context, nothing. I think Native Journal, or Native Magazine, which is one of Nigeria's mainstream popular music journals, published a very disappointing essay on Hausa music. And I feel like, regardless of the fact that their editors maybe did not do sufficient work to confirm the claims in that essay or article, I also think that if we had more young northern people who were listening to this music and interacting with this music, not shy away from writing their opinions about these things and submitting them to these journals, to these institutions, then we would have more accurate representation. When you allow people from the Nigerian mainstream to view us with that oriental gaze and sort of project their ideas of what we are, onto, like, that is what is recorded, that is what is documented. That oriental gaze with which they're looking at us is what gets recorded, not the truth of the matter, not the way we are experiencing the trend, not the way we are reacting to the trend, not the meaning of the trend to us or the history of that, right? So a lot of it just happens and it gets discarded. So yes, we absolutely need a lot more cultural workers, a lot more cultural managers, a lot more curators, critics, writers. And this is maybe also a call to encourage anyone that wants to do it to please, feel free to do the work. Reach out to me, reach out to Star, reach out to Blessing Tarfa. Many people here would be willing to help you and support you and also guide you through the process.
Thank you.
And to go back to the question you asked concerning the intersections between writing and art, that's just where it comes in, and we can't rely on the very traditional way it has always been done. We need spaces that fit with what we currently need. And with the newspapers, for example, we've always had art columns and stuff. But let's ask the honest question. Who reads the newspapers anymore?
A couple of people.
No, among the youth. Among the youth. Of course, there's a huge market for the newspapers still, but is it within the young people? And the young people are the contemporaries. And they are the ones telling the stories, telling our current stories. So, this is not, so I'm going to talk about Konya Shamsrimi, for example, which is a poetry platform. And what Konya Shamsrimi does is that he has taken something that was otherwise, traditional, and made it accessible. So now it's digital. It's a digital space. And we need more digital spaces, more really well-planned, well-executed digital spaces that promote the arts and that is conscious of the story it wants to tell. When Aisha talks about the Native magazine, for example, do we have magazines like that, like really high-end magazines just focused on Northern Nigerian arts?
I'm not sure we do. Does anybody know if we have? No
We
idea.
don't. We really don't. We have, of course, the festivals. We have a lot of exhibitions going on, but we need digital solutions to solve digital problems. So I think this is a very, very long conversation. So
And I think Hibab has given us just 1 hour. We can't cover a lot in 1 hour. So skip it. Let's skip to some. I don't know if any one of you has seen the exhibition, the art exhibition at the other room. So there was this album, I think Salma's album also, and I was going through it and I was looking at the fashion that was interpreted in those. And I'm like, this should be a fashion because I love what they're wearing. And I was talking with Habib, and Habib was like, if you notice, they really had a nonchalant way of dressing. They just dressed. They were not even, the whole veiling up and whatever it was. They really were not doing that. And I had to like ask, why is it that there's a nonchalance that gives it this lovely aesthetic then than it is now, where there's some little pressure here and there. So now my question is, do you think Islamization, for example, has anything to do with the altering of art and writing? I don't know if you know that answer, but this is for you, Aisha. Do you think Islamization has altered art, fashion, and writing?
Yeah, of course. And I'm not sure if this quote is like 100% accurate, but I was reading about Hausa films a few years ago, and someone in that essay, you can ask me after, I really do not recall the name of the essay, but they said that they want the people not only to believe in God, but to show that belief in God on the screens too. This was in response to like Kannywood and, the pressures of actors and for the stories that were told to always reflect Islam and something Islamic kids, all the way down to the way the actors themselves interacted with one another, so no touching and all of that. So of course, like in every culture, when the culture moves in a certain direction, it's going to affect the representations of it. So yes, has the dominance of Islamic thought in the 21st century Northern Nigerian consciousness affected our fashion and the way we dress? Yes, it absolutely has. Again, culture is something that is ever evolving. Maybe in the next 20 years, our culture is going to change and our fashion sense is going to become more nonchalant. We also have to, again, acknowledge that in certain periods, as, again, Nigeria as a whole was grappling with its identity as a newly independent country, it's going to